right. Thank you, Olubumi. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's a real pleasure to have you on Empower and Elevate. And I'm truly honored to feature your voice this season 2 as we explore stories of mentorship and sponsorship and growth. So, just a few quick notes before we dive in. This is going to be a very relaxed conversation recording. Please feel free to be yourself because we are here to
Mhm.
inspire and not to perfect. And the goal is to share real stories, or be authentic, be your authentic self, stories that will
Mhm.
help others to navigate their own journeys as well. So we have 5 different segments that the interviews is centered around 5 different segments. And if there's anything that you like to expand on, please feel free to add on to it. Are you ready
Mhm.
to get started?
For sure. Thank
Okay.
you.
So the very first question that we have for the very first segment is redefining success beyond titles and money. So the question is, what did success mean to you early in your career? And how has that definition evolved?
Mhm. Thank you for that question. I love it. Um, for me, first of all, thank you for having me on this podcast today. As you said, my name is Olubumi Adeyemi. Everybody calls me Olu. For me, early on in my career, especially given my background, I'm originally from Nigeria in West Africa, and as I grew up in Lagos, which is like sub-Saharan Africa's largest economy, I was very conscious of image. Within most families and neighborhoods in Lagos, in the middle class or upper middle class um, of the society, image was everything. And so for me, early on in my career, it was more about having a stable job, in having a noble profession, earning six figures. Well, not immediately, but earning a substantial amount of money that would take you away from middle class to upper middle class and beyond. And so I studied economics in my undergrad, and I found myself applying to different organizations. I ended up starting out my career in financial services, a subsidiary of a commercial bank, but I was working in a non-bank institution within that commercial bank. So success for me early on in my career was mostly about the image. What kind of job are you into? What industry were you? So here am I, entry level management trainee in a commercial bank in the banking industry. So for me, it was a noble profession. It was easy for me. I had interpersonal relations with people every day. I was earning good money. There were, benefits attached to it, and there was training. So I found it was more about the money, the image, and climbing the ranks or climbing the ladder in corporate was well structured within the banking industry in Nigeria. Both then and even now, even though along the years there were major restructuring. I was able to streamline the banks, but I didn't lose my job during those periods. So for me, it was about the image, the nobility, and the money.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your response to that question. Um, when we also look at how we redefine success based on what you've just said, um, I guess everybody's response will be slightly different. But and also, coming from Africa, also when we compare what we have in Africa to what we have in even more developed country, we will see that there's a whole lot of difference, right? But
Right.
yet, but yet, we're able to define what success means to us, which is great. Excellent. So the second question is mentorship and is under the mentorship and sponsorship segment. And the question is, have you ever had to seek out mentorship? And if so, how did you do it?
I love that question. Um, when I got into corporates, straight out of the university, I went into corporates. One of the things that attracted me to the banking industry at the time was the fact that there was a structure, there was a clear career path, and it was so structured that you could move up the ladder with every appraisal. You can get a pay raise, or you can be recommended for promotion, or you can be recommended for an assignment or like a lateral assignment, or you're seconded to another unit, or there's a new project upcoming and you are put on the team. So if you succeed on that team, most likely you get recommended for a promotion. So as I walked over the years, through the years in corporate, and I wasn't climbing the ladder at the pace I thought I should climb at the time, my definitions and my ideas about mentorship began to evolve. And as it evolved, I came to the realization that aside getting the job done, having social skills, relating well with my colleagues, ensuring, of course, punctuality, and doing the basics, there is more to getting ahead in career and in life. And I realized that it was getting a mentor who has walked through that path, who could kind of and hold me and get me to the next level. So at that point, I tried to seek mentors, not directly in my place of work, even though I had informal mentoring from my supervisors at the time, and I'm really grateful for the kind of supervisors that I had, because I was lucky not to have supervisors that were just one level ahead of me. For the most part, in the course of my career, I've had to report sometimes directly to supervisors who were like 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of my role. I don't know if I'm
Okay.
sure you understand what I mean.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So and that what that did was that gave me an advantage ahead of my
Yeah.
peers, because I was able to learn the ropes faster, and I was able to gain ample exposure to cross-functional work within my institution. So, given that, I try to look up to those supervisors as a mentor, albeit I wouldn't call it a formal mentorship, but they were able to mentor me in the course of my career. But because life itself, even though we spend most part of our day at work, but beyond the job, beyond the career, I still needed mentorship in my personal life in relation to my career. So at that time, these supervisors were able to guide me to rise a bit in my career, but I needed somebody who probably had a similar life trajectory to the path that I just started towing, because after a few years, I got married, I had a baby, and if I had had supervisors who were either male or who were unmarried females or were married without children, they would not be able to accurately mentor me in the line that I would go, given those additional aspects of my personal life. So I tried to seek mentorship in them, but it was not 100% accurate. So I looked outwardly within my immediate network. I tried to seek out mentorship in older cousins or siblings. I'm sure you're familiar with most communities in Nigeria, whereby our extended family matters to us a great deal, and we
Yeah.
look up to older siblings, older cousins, or aunts who have walked our paths. And so I tried to do that as well. But after some time, some of them moved far away. I could do phone calls, but it wasn't the same. And video
Mm,
calls, aside Skype, wasn't as frequent as it is now. Like I had a close person I looked up to who moved to Singapore from Nigeria. It was so far away. The time difference didn't give me the opportunity to do that. So I did seek for mentors, but I never had the opportunity to have formal mentorship. And looking back in retrospect, I've come to realize that if I had actually, if I was able to get a formal mentor, I would most likely, for the most part, have risen better in my career. And if I needed to make a change in career path, it wouldn't be when I got to midlife that I'll have to do it. It would have been done many years ago, and I'll have gotten ahead faster and much better.
wow. Thank you so much for that response. I recall now that I believe it's episode 3 that we are talked about formal and informal mentorship, right? And
Hmm.
as I listened to your comments on your career journey from in Nigeria, and the type of informal mentorship that you had. Informal mentorship, as we know, evolves naturally, right?
Hmm.
It's There's no formal program. There's, it just happens. And
Hmm.
it seems to me that you got a bit of that because it is it was through the line of supervisors that you had
Hmm.
to guide you on the current uh, work assignment that you have at that point in time, right?
Yeah.
And informal mentorship really, while we cannot overlook them, they tend to be more, I would say, flexible and personal. They can also they are driven by mutual interest. So when you look at what you were doing at that point in time, they are aware of the type of work that you were doing at that point in time. So there's a mutual interest in when they have to guide you, and also there's trust. And often,
Yes.
it might have lasted a few years since you joined that organization because you were fresh out of university and then moving into this. So you had to learn some things too along the way. But
Hmm.
the only thing with informal mentorship is that they lack structure, like you've said, unlike
Yes.
formal. So if you had the opportunity now to get into formal mentorship, um, you will find that I think you already discovered that you need that to be able to um, forge ahead in your career, and you
Hmm.
need that to be able to not only having a mentor in wherever you are currently working, but you can have a mentor elsewhere. It's not really carved in stone, but you're looking more in terms of you being able to receive and also be able to give back, because of the two-way street that mentorship journey is really all about.
Hmm.
So yeah, so thank you so much for sharing that, for sharing your story on this segment. So the third segment is overcoming fear and imposter syndrome. And the question is, what practices or mindsets have helped you to grow your confidence over time?
I love that question. Um, so naturally, I am someone who is outspoken. Like I've never had a time in my life where I was I was afraid of expressing myself. I've always had verbal expression as a strength. I easily connect to people, and I could be relational. So having said that, because confidence is sort of tied or related to being verbal.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are confident and they're quiet. However, most people that are confident do not shy away from expressing their feelings, if need be, whether verbally or in writing. So over time, I'll say maybe my natural strength has made me grow my confidence over time. And the fact that I'm able to have a college degree, as it is in Africa, it's the same thing here in North America. The more educated you are, the more you have better social confidence. I really hope that's correct, but that's the way I feel. So I feel like if you have a good education, it boosts your self confidence. And then
Mm-hmm.
as an individual, I take my Christian faith very seriously, and I believe that every human being is created uniquely. And because we're
Absolutely.
created uniquely, we have varied strengths, weaknesses, interests, passions, and areas of peak performance. And so, given those parameters, I feel like my self confidence is literally tied to my personality. So if I believe, okay, this is you, Olu, you have a college education, you have no excuse. If you have a college degree, you have no excuse, because some people do not even have a college degree, but they've been able to tap inwardly into their own peculiar and unique strength. They've
Mm-hmm.
leveraged on it, they've sharpened it, and they've emerged as a success story in the world we live in today. So if you have a college degree, you wouldn't, have any excuse to fail. And so, based on my Christian values, I believe that I'm uniquely made. There's no human being without unique talents and potentials. So potentials can be latent, but I believe that if the more I age, the more I tap into my inner self, I'm able to rise beyond the imposter syndrome. And as soon as I got to the point of self-awareness, which of course in sociology, on the Maslow um, um,
Theory.
hierarchy of
Mm-hmm.
needs, it shows that the point of self-awareness is like a break-even point. So at that point, I understood that okay, I'm unique. This is me. I'll try hard to work on my weaknesses, but I will sharpen my strengths. I'll push through on my strengths if I need to get more training, more knowledge. If I need to be trained more on my strengths, all I need to do is to sharpen it more. And when I'm able to do that and tap into it, despite the fact that I still have the fear sometimes, in the last 3 years, something tells you, oh, you can't do this. What if you post it? What if other people think it's not good enough? But that's Christian value of the fact that every human being is created uniquely. And if you have specific strengths put in you by the creator, which is God, the creator is like an investor. He puts those strengths
Mm-hmm.
there and expects it to yield returns. And so at that point, I was able to say to myself, no more imposter syndrome, even though it was hard. I literally had to speak to myself every day. I went ahead to watch the audio recap of the Purpose Driven Life by Pastor Rick Warren on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Though I'd read the book about 16 years ago, but I went back recently. I had a review of it, the audio part on YouTube. The more I did that, I read more books, I read my Bible. I was able to overcome the imposter syndrome. And at that point, I was able to break even with the confidence that God has put in me.
Fantastic. That's a great story that you just shared there. And I'm thankful to God for the faith, the strength that follows your faith in being able to overcome fear. I tagged imposter syndrome as a silent blocker. It creeps in
Mm-hmm.
when we least expect it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it also shows up when we hesitate to ask for help. But you know how to navigate that journey. You have fought that fight and you have come out strong, right? And I think the story for many are still out there struggling with imposter syndrome is
Mm-hmm.
um, get into the habit of mentorship, because mentorship gives your voice, your confidence, a voice.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have someone that can guide, that can lead you, probably someone that has been in the same, situation before, and they've come out strong. Because with you now, so fast forward to a couple months or a year, you are able to even now give back to others, because you know what you've experienced, you know how you've been refined, and you know how you now shine, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you will be able to mentor and guide other people. Because
Yes.
when you look at this imposter syndrome is it's something that I'll say self-doubt,
Yes.
irrespective of how successful you are,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think we fall into that sometimes, because we doubt ourselves. Am I able to do this?
Yes.
If I go in this direction, is this something that will I be successful? Am I ready?
Mm-hmm.
Those are some of the self-doubt questions that pops into our head. And it's not as if we don't know exactly what to do, or we will not be good at what we set our minds to do. We will be great at them, but we just get self-doubt creeps in, and
Mm-hmm.
it slows everything down.
Oh
It
my.
slows everything down. That's
And
that's yeah.
mhm. Go on, ma'am.
Yeah, no, it when self-doubt creeps in, it
Mm-hmm.
slows everything down, and but we don't have to let fear take control of
Right.
where we're going, right? When
Mm-hmm.
the whispers come, we should be able to lift our head up and look at ourselves in the mirror and say, "You got this. I can do this," you
Mm-hmm.
know, and then be able to uh, self awareness. You mentioned self awareness, self reflection, confidence. When we wrap all those three things around ourselves, I think we'll be able to break the power of imposter syndrome in our lives. You know,
Right.
yeah.
For me, imposter syndrome was not only slowing things down. It got me stuck. I was
Mm,
stuck at a point for years. I couldn't rise above that syndrome.
mm,
I had videos, I wrote things that can pass to be published as articles. I never got them out there. I never put them on ResearchGate. So I battled with imposter syndrome shortly before I arrived in Canada about 7 years ago. And when I came here, I tried to integrate into the community, and that took another almost 2 years. And then the
mm,
COVID-19 pandemic broke out, and then mental health was something everyone needed to guard
mm.
to avoid breakdown. So
Absolutely.
during that period, for me, it was tough. Everyone went online. I started to write. I would journal. I'll write things. I would have ideas. I'll research things. I'll put them together. Sometimes I'll post them and I'll change my settings on social media to private to be read by me alone. And that imposter syndrome, bad voice will say to me, no one's gonna like it. It's not
Mm,
it's not relevant. It does not add anything to current studies. It wouldn't go far in the academic world. It wouldn't do this, and it would go on and on. It was so bad that I posted one or two things on ResearchGate, and then I changed the settings, the privacy settings, to be read by me only, me only. And I worked here in Canada. I worked for a government agency, and there was a call for papers to create a policy framework. And I had written something spectacular, and I put my name, the short form of my first name. I didn't put my last name, and I sent an email. And there was a meeting set up, and I was called in there. And they said to me, "Why did I put only my name? What about the names of the other people?" I said, "There was no other person. I was the one who wrote this."
Wow.
They said, "You wrote this. So why did you not put your last name? Why did you put just your name?" They thought it was an error. I said, "Oh, well, I would prefer to be anonymous." And they said to me, "Why?" "Okay, can we
Hmm.
at least put your picture so that when we create the framework, we can share?" And I said, "No, I don't want my picture in there." I ended up putting all the information. I said to them, just my first name, the short form of it. Do not put my picture. Do not put my last name. I didn't have any problems with background check because for you to get in there, you have to pass criminal record check. I wasn't an illegal. I was a permanent resident, so there was no reason for me to be afraid. But like you said, it's creeped in, it crippled me, and it got me stuck. And lo and behold, like a month after, I saw the framework being shared internally, and it was also posted on the government website. And the name of
Wow.
the people who interviewed me were put there because I told them not to. So after that,
Hmm.
I removed the name of the agency. I went on ResearchGate, I posted it, and I still changed the settings to me alone. But after going for career coaching at the employment center, because midlife transition, which is another story for another day, I knew I had to do something entirely different that was perfectly aligned to where my strengths lie. So I was told, "No, Lou, you have to, if you need to go back to school, go back." So when I went back to school, it was just until recently I changed the career settings. I took out the name of the agency for confidentiality purposes, and then I posted it. And I started receiving comments like invitation to come contribute into a journal from other parts of the world.
Wow.
And I'm like, what the heck? And then
Wow.
I attended a webinar in school on campus. And the webinar was teaching us about how to further post things on certain um, journal websites, that how to identify the journal websites that will not cheat you, that were very ethical in their
Mhm.
operations. And you can even, if you go a step further by getting a PhD, you can begin to earn money. I knew I could do all those things. I had knowledge of those things in my undergrad. But you know that imposter syndrome is like, it's
Yes.
the elephant in the room. It kept me
Mm.
down. I was stuck. I didn't believe in myself. I wrote a lot of things. I had lots of videos. I had recordings. I had photos. I felt if you post this on social media, people are going to laugh at you. No one's going to ever believe you did this. So
Mm.
for me, it didn't just cripple me. I was stuck
And now
until
you have the power to break free because imposter syndrome always thrives in isolation. It
right.
always thrives in isolation. So even if you have to take baby steps to get to where you're going, you already have this. Listen, I'm also an introvert. Even though some people say, no, 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 you're not an introvert. I know so many times I've been called, to speak as panelist, as a panelist, and fear will grip me. Not that I don't know what I will say, not I don't know what I'm going to contribute, but then, like you said, it's this thing that holds you down, that doesn't make you want to move ahead. And it's
Hmm.
all up to us to break free because we know exactly who we are and what we represent. We have the voice and we have
Hmm.
the support. structure, right? So we need to be able to break free. And like I said, imposter syndrome thrives in isolation. Usually do not like to post on LinkedIn. I like to respond to messages or whatever. But then when I started this podcast, I said I needed to let people know the path that I'm following now, so that if anyone needs help, I'm here to help. And that's how I started. So every time I launch a podcast, I also post it on LinkedIn to direct them to the podcast. So gradually, I'm gaining my ground, right?
Yes.
So you have to also learn to do the same and, get some practices and mindset. You're doing great, but you're just not moving where you want to move. You have all the resources, you have everything that you need. You only now need yourself to be able to push you forward, to do what you want to do.
Right.
Okay. Now, the final no, not the final question. We still have two more questions to go,
Yes.
and that's fine. It's under building inclusive leadership. So, how do you respond when someone says, we're just promoting the most qualified person? How would you respond to that?
Mm. Well, in my experiences working in Canada, I've usually worked in organizations where diversity is said to be recognized. However, at the point of promotion, I've not heard anybody say to me that we're only going to promote the most qualified person. Sometimes the most qualified person, or most times, are being passed over. When I mean the
Mm,
most qualified, I'm talking here about the most qualified not only in terms of exceptional skills,
mhm.
trained qualifications, interpersonal relations, peak performance in pivotal assignments and projects. That's my own connotation of the most qualified, and in some cases, who have spent a lot of years as well. But I've witnessed more than one situation where, for reasons unknown, or maybe due to discrimination, prejudice, stereotypes, these persons are passed over, and in some worst case scenarios, the least qualified person is the one who's promoted.
That's right.
And so
That's right.
it's a toxic situation, especially when at the point of you joining the organization, you're made to believe that employment equity is is a thing, they're big on it, and then you get into the system, you see toxic, you see that the system is toxic, and you
Hmm.
put in all your best. You see people who've been there 4, 5, 7, 10 years. They've spent the years, they put in peak performance, they are highly skilled, they are training others to ensure succession planning within the organization. They are placed on strategic assignments that contributes valuably to the organization. However, with each appraisal, they are passed over, and people who are sometimes least qualified or mid qualified are promoted. And in those cases, I've never heard anybody say we only promoted the least qualified. Usually, they they act like they're the boss. They don't owe anybody any explanations, and
Explanation.
so
Building inclusive leadership. Um, when we talk about inclusivity, right? We
mhm,
have to ensure that our leaders can cultivate environment where everybody feels seen, everybody
mm,
feels heard, and everybody feels valued, right?
right,
And also how our leaders, how inclusive leadership can fuel innovation, performance, and trust. People have to learn that when we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that we're actually walking the talk, right? When it comes to the behavior, inclusive behaviors has to be visible in daily
Mm.
leadership. Either you're hiring someone, either you're in meetings, either you're promoting, or either you are providing feedback. As a matter of fact, empathy. We
Right.
need leaders who are empathetic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, leaders who can empathize with your situation. Leaders who can either see that this person needs coaching, provides that. This person needs additional skills, provides guidance to say, okay, you need to upskill in this area. Or leaders who can push you forward and say, you can do this. A one size fits all type of opportunity. What are the practices that they have in place that can help us to overcome unstructured or unconscious bias? We should put it that way too, right?
Right.
So this, I really love that topic, building inclusive leadership, and I think it's for every leader. We need to be
Right.
vigilant of and ensure that there's no discrimination in the way that we lead, and
Right.
we are empathetic with
Mm.
the staffs that we have, and we value each one, irrespective of race, gender, or anything, that we value everyone, and people are given equal opportunity.
Right. Talking
But
about
okay,
oh,
go ahead.
okay. Talking about empathy. About 3 years ago, I wrote an article, even though I never developed it fully into a research paper, but it was an article, and I have it in my archives, and I've not published it anywhere yet. Um, to still need a little, maybe adding my references and all of that. But I wrote something about improving service delivery for diversity. And
Mm,
service delivery, it's related to stakeholders. And stakeholders, we have both internal and external stakeholders. Service delivery, customer service to external customers, because we know that the success of the business, as leaders, we know that the success of the business depends heavily on the service quality that's been meted out to the external stakeholders, which are the external customers. But most of the time, we do not give the same empathy to the internal stakeholders, which are the employees. Most of the time, for the most part in Canada, I've watched leadership do a disservice in terms of service quality to their internal customers, which are the employees. They do a disservice by not acknowledging the fact that some categories of people are more privileged. They have a head start, and the odds are in their favor. So when the odds are
absolutely.
against a certain group, for example, migrant populations, diverse populations, they have a lot of things to grapple with. They initially do not have their credentials um, um, accredited in Canada, especially in specific fields of work. And the fact that they still have to integrate, they're thousands of miles away from anywhere they ever need to be home. They have to build in their social network from the very rock bottom, from the ground up in the new country which they are found themselves. And the fact that they may not have a last name to pave the way for them. I mean, they're not descendants, like they themselves are first generation immigrants. And so the odds are like kind of stacked against them. And within the broader community, many of this immigrant population, they have an accent. They have an accent. They do not speak in the Canadian lingo immediately they arrive here, especially when they arrive here as full fledged adults. And so they have to grapple with parenting, with this, with that, and they're grappling with all of that. And despite that, they're still bringing themselves to the table, they're applying themselves. Not to forget, we also have different kinds of learners. People learn at different paces. Some people are visual learners, some are kinesthetic learners, some are audio learners. So when people are not given an equal opportunity, some persons are privileged and they have a head start. When you say you promote the most qualified person, it will be a biased statement to make. And most likely, that promotion would end up being discriminatory, given that some people are privileged. And it's even worse off entirely when privileged persons do not match up or meet up in terms of 90% of the parameters and they still get promoted ahead of others. It goes ahead to affect the mental health of those who have been done a disservice, and it depletes their morale, their productivity levels deplete also. And if you look at it holistically, he becomes a colossal issue within the broader organization. So personally, I am not the one who speaks for discrimination, but I'm someone who's all for the arts. And I've been doing a
Mm-hmm.
lot of research recently. I've read a lot of literature review on social work, on competencies in the place of work, cultural competency within multicultural Canada, the growing multicultural Canada, and I've seen that the stakes are very low at the moment, and a lot
Yeah.
can be done, like sustained action.
Mm-hmm.
Practical ways have to be embedded and applied to ensure that everyone is carried along.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Building inclusive leadership. I have a final thought on that, and that is leadership is not truly successful until it is inclusive. So anyone in leadership has to have an inclusive mindset, right?
Right.
Okay. Our last question is the future of work and legacy. That's the segment. And the question is, how has your approach to work-life boundaries or balance over the years changed over the years? How has it changed?
Hmm. Um, before now, I my kids were younger, and when you have younger kids, aside having to take them through school runs, before and after school service and all of that, you still have to also survive as a new immigrant, because if you have not spent more than 10 years in Canada and you were not born here, you're still a new immigrant. Honestly, that's for me. I'm not saying that's a fact for everybody. You may not see yourself as new, but each time you go out there and in the public, you get subtle or overt reactions that tells you you do not belong here, you're an outsider. Then you still have to go back and work more on your integration levels. And so for me, my approach to work-life balance has changed over the years. Work-life balance is very crucial. At this point of my life, my kids are no longer very young, but they are in that season where I have to grapple with a lot of other things. For example, they are in their sports seasons. So I'm dropping a kid here, there for maybe for practice or for games. If it's practice, I take my device with me. I could be typing, I could be doing a short video, and I can be able to plan for myself. Work life balance is very, very, very important.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wow, it has been a long haul. Yeah, I've truly enjoyed your career journey in the story. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, experience, and also your insights around all this topic, especially around the imposter syndrome and also the future of work and legacy. I really do appreciate that. And I know that our listeners will walk away both inspired and empowered also with your career story, because conversations like this also reminds us that mentorship, leadership, inclusiveness, growth, everything is not one size fits all. But your journey, Olu, proves that impact is possible at every stage in life. So I thank you for sharing. I thank you for being authentic. And also, I will say that before we sign off, if there's any final thoughts that you would like to leave our audience with, please share if you have any final thoughts.
Thank you for having me, Joanna. I would want to say close with these final words for me, actually. Um, Recently, I saw a post on Threads on social media. It says, "Can I start all over again at the old age of 37?" And someone responded there and said, "You can start even at 80.
Of course.
Anytime you wake up and have fresh ideas and you have the mental energy, the physical energy, or the physical human resource close to you that can help you drive it, please start
Mhm.
again. Click on that
Exactly.
start button, reset, refire, and go for it."
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm in total support of that. You can start all over again. The sky is the limit. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate you. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.